Hey everyone, what is up and welcome back to the Lifestyle Lifter Show. And today is the third part of our three-part series on all things related to fat loss. So as we spoke about in the first episode, it was eating smarter, second episode, training harder. And today it's all about making this a lifestyle, making it a habit, Mac Lifestyle Fitness, what it's all about actually implementing fat loss into your life so you can sustain it long term. And in order for us to do that, it really does start out with building some good habits. So, what are some good habits that we can implement into our lifestyle to actually lose fat? Starting out with nutrition, I like the 3-2-1 method. What is the 3-2-1 method? That is, in every single day, ideally, you have about 3 meals a day, 3 to 4 meals a day with protein. Two of those meals contain veggies and one glass of water before every meal. Such a simple and effective way to actually just lose weight without even necessarily counting calories, which is one of the questions we'll address as well. So 3 meals a day with protein, that could be breakfast, that could be something like overnight oats, that could be protein porridge, that could be porridge and eggs, that could be an omelette. Okay. You've got a first meal there with protein. Second meal, this could be your lunch. This could be a chicken stir fry. That's your protein there. This could be um chili con carne stir fry that you cooked for dinner yesterday. This could be sweet potato and carrot shepherd's pie, one of our members' favorites from our Live and Lean recipe cookbook. Why is that effective for lunch? Because you've got protein and all of those lunches there that I gave an example of, they've also got veggies in there. And then for your dinner, this could be you name it. Okay, this could be any particular stir fry. It could just be a traditional Irish dinner of meat and veg and potatoes. Again, you've got protein and you've got veggies in at least two of those meals. So at least 3 meals a day with protein. Two of those meals contain veggies and such an underrated tool. Do not neglect this. One glass of water before every meal. You have 4 meals a day. That's 4 glasses of water because I don't know about you, but I sometimes find it overwhelming. I fill up a gallon of water every single day. Or sometimes if I go to a shop and I get a 2 liter bottle of water, it's like, God, that is a lot of water I have to drink. But if you just make this into small incremental steps, just pouring it into a glass and drinking it from there, drinking small amounts continuously, I just find it much less or much easier to actually get enough water in and less overwhelming thinking, God, I haven't drank much water today. So I really have to chug this 2 liter bottle, which is not recommended. The faster you input it, the faster it will come out. So that's a nice way just to get your water intake in. Now, I cannot pass nutrition without actually speaking about the 80-20 principle. What is the 80-20 principle? And this is where people go wrong. I did this before on a call with someone from members, and I said, okay, I had 10 foods on my food diary today. And eight of those foods were the likes of your chicken, your broccoli, your rice. We'll just use the classic three plus five more single ingredient foods. And the other two foods were a double cheeseburger from McDonald's and a large fries. Is that not the 80-20 principle? Some people said yes, some people said no, some people said we weren't sure. And if you were to think of the 80-20 principle as just being 8 out of 10 of your foods, technically it would be. But when it comes to nutrition, and not that there's anything magical about the 80-20 principle, you can be 70-30 if you want, or you can be 90-10. 90-10, your results are going to be faster. 70-30, your results are going to be slower. Okay. Just 80-20 in general, it's thrown out there a lot because it's a nice way of obviously getting consistent results without aiming for perfection and making this more of a lifestyle. But going back to my point there, is that or is that not the 80-20 principle? It is absolutely not when it comes to nutrition. The 80-20 principle with nutrition is 80% of your calories, not 80% of your foods. So, for example, on that 2000 calorie diet, as I already mentioned in previous podcasts, if you want the 80-20 principle, that means 1,600 of those calories are from more single ingredient whole foods. Okay. What are single ingredient whole foods? An apple is just an apple. Banana is just a banana. 100% Irish chicken fillet, it's just a chicken fillet. Okay. Nuts are just nuts. An avocado is just an avocado. You don't need to check the ingredients to see what is in your apple, what is in your avocado, what are in these 100% cashew nuts, what's in this 100% chicken breast. It's just single ingredient. Whereas, let's just say, for example, Pasta. Pasta is not just pasta. It's not just grown, okay? It's what we call more, quote unquote, a processed food, as is bread. You don't just, bread is not a single ingredient food. I'm not demonizing bread, but it's just an example of a food that is more, quote unquote, processed. Just like an apple, it's single ingredient. Apple juice, there might be traits of an apple in there, but it's also got additional chemicals and sweeteners, etc., etc. So ideally, you want 80% of your calories from single ingredient whole foods and 20% from more what we call processed foods. Okay. And a good experiment for anyone doing this is just to look at your MyFitnessPal from yesterday, if you're listening to this in the morning, or today at the end of the evening, and look at your foods. Count up the number of calories you've eaten today, and then on the left-hand side, categorize the foods as single ingredients, and the right-hand side as some more processed ingredients. I'm not demonizing foods, but it's just a good activity for you to do to see how actually what is your food quality where it should be? Are your macros there? Are your micros there? Are you actually abiding to the 80-20 principle? And for a lot of people, just from my coaching experience initially, when they start out, oftentimes it can be 50-50. It could be maybe skewed 55-45 or 60-40, but very, very few, when they actually do this activity, are at the 80-20, maybe 60-40 for a lot. But just that's a little like task for you to actually try out. Now, when it comes to nutrition as well, we spoke about in the previous podcast about the importance of your food shop, about your food environment. So I'm not gonna repeat myself there when it comes to training then. So this important that you just don't overcommit at the start. It's a big problem people have that, okay, inspiration and motivation is high at the start and they go balls to the wall straight out. I want to do 5 strength, 4 strength, whatever it might be. And I'll ask them, how many times did you work out last week? I didn't work out last week, or maybe once. When was the last time you worked out 4 times a week? It could have been last year. What makes you think now that you can go from 1 to 4 and do that consistently for 12 weeks and beyond? So why don't we start out with maybe 2 for some people, or maybe 3, depending on your schedule. But just make a list of some non-negotiables for you. Non-negotiables that you got to do every single week. All right. And just in terms of training, that could be okay. A non-negotiable for me is I do 4 strength. If you are committed and you are certain you can do that, that is your non-negotiable. A non-negotiable for me is I absolutely will do 100% 4 strength. I know 100% certainty I can, and 10,000 steps a day. That is for me. You might be different, but what are your non-negotiables? Don't let those standards drop then. Okay. Whatever your standards are, do not let them drop. And it goes with your weight as well. Okay. A lot of people, when they initially start working with me, it's after a point where they've come to like a low point and their standards have dropped to a point where they're not willing to accept them going or getting any worse. So, for example, I had a guy and he was after a holiday in Italy, eating a lot of pizza, eating a lot of pasta, and he got to his heaviest weight he was at in years. And that was the moment for him that he said, okay, my standards have dropped considerably. I'm not going to let them drop anymore. I want to make a change. So when it comes to actually just fat loss, for example, my standard for my body fat is I will not let it get past probably 13%. That's kind of my standard. I do not let it go above that. Okay. Yours might be different, just like with your weight. You might have a standard that, okay, if my weight surpasses 80 kilos, then I need to just make a change and do something about it. Okay. So set standards for yourself. And this comes down to your daily habits, your daily actions. And that is why habit stacking, what I'm talking about here, is so important. The 3-2-1 method, the 80-20, committing to a baseline number of sessions, setting yourself a daily step target. These small little actions done consistently will compound and will give you that lasting fat loss and those results that you want. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is actually just lifestyle. And particularly, first of all, in sleep. I was actually just recently listening to the Matthew Walker podcast. I heard him initially on Joe Rogan and absolutely changed my perspective on sleep. And I heard him just there recently on Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett's podcast as well. And just the three main takeaways are off the podcast. Okay. It's like a 2 hour plus podcast. I'll give it to you in three short snippets. That is, first of all, lack of sleep can increase your appetite the next day by upwards of 25%. That is no surprise there. After a bad night's sleep, okay, we tend to want more food to keep us awake, to keep us more alert. And the interesting thing is, after a bad night's sleep, we all know ourselves, the type of food that we crave tends to be more hyper palatable processed foods. So you're probably not going to opt for the carrots when the chips are there. Okay. You would probably want more of the quote unquote the higher sugar foods, the likes of your donut, the likes of your biscuits, the likes of your chocolate, as opposed to the broccoli, the vegetables, all of the more whole foods. Okay. So the type of food that you crave, on top of having an increased appetite, it tends to be more hyper palatable and processed foods. Okay. Another interesting thing though is, even if you are in a calorie deficit and you are losing weight, with the reduction in poor sleep, 70% of that weight that you lose, up to 70%, can come from your lean muscle as opposed to the stubborn fat that you want to lose. That is just game changing. So you can be doing all the work in the gym. Training is right, the nutrition is right. And it's just this element here with your sleep. And you're wondering, okay, I'm losing weight, but I'm not seeing the changes that I 100% like to see. This could be the missing factor here. It could be the sleep. And it's just it is the most natural remedy for recovery that most people, myself sometimes included, have neglected in the past. I used to be of the opinion that I'm in this, 1% bracket that I don't need any more than 6 hours of sleep. Tony Robbins can do it. I can do it as well. I was wrong. Okay. And if you're someone who says I can get by 6 hours of sleep, I used to be the same. But here's the thing. 6 hours of sleep, that might be you operating at your 60%. And you've just accepted the fact that 60% is your baseline, is your norm. But I guarantee you, if you're in that bracket and then one or two nights in a row you get 8 hours or 9 hours of sleep, your performance will increase. And that 60%, that might increase to 80%. And you might just realize then that you've been operating below your overall potential and your standards. Do not neglect sleep, prioritize it. Okay. So some ways to actually get a better night's sleep and some tips in general. So first of all, you want your room like a bat cave. You want it nice and dark. You don't want any lights in there at all. Just set yourself a rule, no electronics in the room. This annoys me when I hear some of my clients ask them, do you bring the phone to bed? You should not be on your phone in bed. Okay. This can suppress your melatonin. The bright lights there, that can actually impact your overall sleep quality. Okay, so that is the first thing. No electronics in the room. Let's reverse engineer it. The 3-2-1 rule. I mean, it can definitely be effective, and that is 3 hours before bed, no food. You go to bed at 10 o'clock, cut your eating window at around 7. 2 hours before bed, no drinks or no work. Okay, so we stop working at 8 p.m. if we're in bed for 10 p.m. We don't drink any more water 2 hours before bed. And then 1 hour before bed, this is the hard one, no electronics. Again, I know it is difficult. I myself, I cannot say that I practice this every single night. I'm doing my best. But what I do, the electronics in particular is the one that challenges me. So what I do is you can actually schedule downtime on your phone. And I've done an Instagram post on this as well, effectively where all of the apps shut down at a certain time. And if you schedule that downtime on your phone to start 1 hour before you go to bed, it's a nice way just to say, okay, downtime is on my phone. I should do the same. All right. So there's some sleep tips. You want your room nice and dark, the 3-2-1 rule. Actually, 10-3-2-1, 10 hours before bed, no caffeine. And again, this might come as a surprise for some people. And you might be saying there, okay, well, I can have a cup of coffee before bed and this will not impact my sleep. And again, Matthew Walker spoke about this on the podcast, and it was an eye-opener for me. And sure, you might think that it doesn't impact your sleep, but the quality of your sleep, and REM sleep in particular, REM stands for rapid eye movement sleep. That is the deep sleep that you really, really want. That is the REM sleep that if you ever woke up feeling 100% refreshed, okay, chances are you were in a deep REM sleep state. And caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours, meaning it can take between 10 to 12 hours to actually get that cup of coffee you had at 10 a.m. that could still potentially be in your system at 8 p.m. at night. So at least 10 hours before bed, I would say no caffeine. And if you are someone who likes coffee after that, there are so many benefits to coffee. But as Matthew Walker spoke about, the benefits are actually in the bean itself, not the caffeine. So decaffeinated or decaf coffee, it actually has the same benefits there. So I would say anything after midday, try to go for decaf. Okay. That is just, look, take this with a pinch of salt here. You do you, but that is just what the research and what the science has said. On top of this as well, just not to use alcohol to put you to sleep, that you might think it might relax you, but again, it's not going to get you into that deep, rapid eye movement sleep, that REM sleep. Okay. Secondly, on the lifestyle element, I want to talk about stress. And not all stress is bad. Like when you do a gym workout, that creates stress on the body. And you need that stress to actually get that adaptation, to get that response, to build some lean muscle. However, chronic stress, where your stress is consistently elevated throughout the day, that can be negative. And I have a client, John, who we spoke recently on a call, and we didn't talk about calories. We barely spoke about strength training. It was all around this lifestyle and stress management. He was working 18-hour days, just madness. Okay, 18-hour days and not having any time at all for himself. And he was meant to come home. This was actually before Christmas too. We had a similar conversation and he wanted to do a bit of a cut before he came home for Christmas. So we didn't actually really make any tweaks to his nutrition. We barely made any tweaks to his training. The only thing I asked him to do is try to manage his stress a bit more, to have a bit of me time, to have a bit more downtime, and just to prioritize his sleep. That's the only thing we changed. Okay. And within the week, John will say it himself, that is when he started seeing big, big changes. Reduction in body fat, improvement in performance in the gym, his overall mood, his overall energy, much, much better. So if you're someone out there, and I sometimes fall into this bracket where you bring your work home with you and you're eating dinner with your family or friends, but your mind is elsewhere and you're thinking about tomorrow's to-do list today and you're everywhere but in the present moment, that can just drain you out. It can really drain you out. So just finding something that will balance you out that can manage that stress. Common challenge amongst your members. And so some suggestions are just going for a walk and not bringing the AirPods with you. You know, sometimes just going for a walk and having some white space there. That is important. That you're not just constantly being fed by technology, by podcasts, even though I know this is a podcast, but I'll just put it out there. You know, going for just a walk with no AirPods. It could be phoning a friend. It could be journaling. It could be some form of meditation. Something that will balance you out to manage that stress so you're not in a chronically elevated stress state for the full 24 hours of the day. These things, the sleep and the stress, can be the silent killers of fat loss. Okay? And I'm not saying that to scare you, I'm just saying that to educate you, because I know myself, I'm sometimes my own worst enemy. So I'm doing the training, I'm doing the nutrition. It's this that I need to take care of. And chances are, if you're listening to this, you're probably a working professional. You probably take pride in your career. Okay. You want to go for promotions. You are ambitious in life. You've got aspirations there. You don't want to just settle for the norm. You've got that type A personality. And that can be a huge, huge advantage for us. But sometimes it can be detrimental on our progress if we don't know when to turn it down. And there's a time and a place for turning it down and scaling it back. All right. Now, just going on to some frequently asked questions I get around fat loss. I'm going to go on to rapid fire now. And first one is cardio versus weights for fat loss. I don't like saying either or. You should just do weights. You should just do cardio. But if you had to pick one, weights would be absolutely 100% give you more bang for your buck. Because when people say they actually want to lose fat and they want to tone up, What does tone really mean? What gives your body that shape and that tone? It is not your bones, it is muscle in the absence of body fat. And how do you build muscle? I spoke with this before. You build muscle by lifting weights. How do you lose fat? You lose fat by being in a calorie deficit. So you can absolutely reach your desired body fat percentage without doing cardio. However, I will say there's a difference between looking good and actually performing and functioning and having longevity there. And that is the real benefits of cardio. A study was done actually on this. Joel Jamieson, he's a huge guy in the conditioning industry, just a big name. What I mean is, and he just studied the average lifespan of endurance athletes and strength athletes, and on average, endurance athletes lived for 7 years longer than typical just strength athletes. So, look, cardio for fat loss is not essential. But if you want longevity, if you want health, if you want fitness, if you're in this for in the long run, I would absolutely be recommending you're doing some form of cardio. I spoke with that in the previous training. So this could be high intensity, it could be low intensity, steady state. It could just be actually your typical zone 2 cardio. Okay. And this can be a bit challenging for some to get their head around, but the recommended amount of zone 2 cardio, which is like your steady state cardio, is about 150 to 180 minutes per week, which is actually, up to 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours, which is quite a lot. But even if you're getting two zone 2 sessions in at 45 minutes on the elliptical, on the air bike, on the just a steady state run, whatever it might be, cardio is really effective for health and longevity, but it is not essential for fat loss. Next question. Can I build muscle and burn fat at the same time? In order for you to build muscle, you've got to be in a calorie surplus where you're taking in more calories than you're expending. In order for you to burn fat, as we know, you've got to be in a calorie deficit. So technically speaking, you cannot build muscle and burn fat at the same time, but there are exceptions. First of all, if you're new to the gym and you're just starting out, you will get what we call newbie gains. So if you freaking if you're in that honeymoon phase, take advantage of it. Even if that is honestly, research has shown, even if it's just like doing a bit of cardio, you actually will get some benefits to it. Obviously, not as much as actually doing a right structured strength training program with cardio combined, but you can build muscle and burn fat if you're just new to the gym. Secondly, if you are detrained, so maybe you've been doing this before in the past, but you took a bit of a long layoff there and you get back to it and you're in a slight calorie deficit, but you're actually building some muscle as well, that is possible. And thirdly, if you are taking steroids, okay, like the Liver King, but you deny it, you can build muscle and burn body fat at the same time. However, if you have been training consistently for a while, you've been doing it for over a year or 18 months or so, and there's a difference between working out and training. You're actually training now, you're following a program, and you're making progress, you're seeing results. It requires a lot of input for very, very little output for you to actually build muscle and burn fat at the same time, which is why I recommend you look at your training over the course of a year and build in some cycles there. That, okay, if we reverse engineer this now, I'll actually start from the fall. And usually what I like to do, I'll just go with my own approach. From like September to Christmas, I like to do more of a lean bulk phase. Okay. Then at Christmas time, obviously, um, calories can increase exponentially sometimes for a week or two. So in January, the first week or two, you might go into a cutting phase. Okay. However, depending on how hard you went to Christmas, what I usually like to do is I will still continue on my lean bulk phase until usually around this time, around March. And then from March until June, I might go into a deficit and go into a cut. And then from June until September, I might just focus on maintenance and actually just maintaining that body fat percentage that I've dropped. So I'll try to do a lean bulk for 3 to 6 months of the year, a deficit for 3 months, and then maintenance for 3 months. Yours might look different, but just kind of, if you actually address your year in terms of seasons, it can be very, very easy to decide when you want to actually build muscle and when you want to drop body fat. Most people want to look their best, particularly for summertime, when you're wearing string vests, when you're topless at the beach, when you're going on holidays. when you're going to be wearing dresses, when you're going to be wearing short sleeve t-shirts, etc., etc. I'm the same. So that is why I like to kind of prioritize, look at my leanness around this time of year. You do you though, that is just a suggestion. Next question, how can you maintain fat loss or weight loss after you lose it? And the good news is the process of losing weight and maintaining weight, it's actually much, much different. And I'll just use a client as an example. I have a client, Ian, working with me at the moment, and he's a very active guy. He's actually training 5 times a week at the moment, and he's doing a physically active job. He's doing a labor-intensive job. And we spoke initially on his consult call, and he wanted to do actually like a kind of a maintenance slash a lean bulk phase. And looking at his calories, they were actually very, very low. If when and low is contextual, but for him, they were at like 2100 and he was sitting at roughly 76 kilos at 2100. So I just told him, like, look, for your activity levels, it's no wonder your energy levels are quite low. You're walking a lot during the day. He said he's carrying up cement, floors and floors, labor intensive work there. He said his shoulders would be sore come the end of the day at work, and sometimes he wouldn't have the energy to go to the gym. So what we did was initially, look, I don't like to do a drastic increase in his calories, but we initially, I think, bumped them up between 25 rest, 2,700 on training. And then every single week, we increase them systematically by about 100. At the moment now, he is at 3,500, 3,600 calories, I believe. And his weight has only gone from 76 to between 77 and 78 over the course of 8 weeks, which, when you think about it, that is an increase of 1,500 calories per day. Per day. Okay. That is what? Over 10,000 extra calories a week. And this is why I don't always agree with the myth that, okay, you want to lose 1 pound, well, then just eat 3,500 calories less. Because Ian is a walking example of this. He's only gained 2 kilos, which is like 4 pounds, just over 4 pounds in 8 to 9 weeks, despite the fact that he's eating an extra 10,000 calories per week. All right. So this is what we call reverse dieting. I can use myself as my own best example. I reverse dieted out of my cut after the photo shoot, and I increased my maintenance calories from probably 2,900 to 3,300 in 12 weeks. Okay. So it's a case of, okay, you've reached your desired weight. You've got there by being in a calorie deficit. You don't want to stay in that calorie deficit for any longer. So your goal should be to get back to maintenance as quick as possible while maintaining that weight loss. And a good way to do that is to maybe systematically increase your calories by, let's just say, 200 or 300 initially, and then every single week bump them up by 50 to 100, potentially more, potentially less, depending on your progress. And if you feel you're gaining weight too quickly or gaining body fat too quickly, you might be going too aggressive. But if you're not noticing much or any difference at all in the scale, you might be able to push that bit more. Okay. And what I will say is with reverse dieting, it's not all just sunshine and rainbows. You will gain a small bit of fat when you want to get out of that, deficit and maintain it. But if you just have that long-term approach in mind, it's actually good for your body. Your body might need some of that extra, that stored extra fat there if you get to a really low body fat percentage. Now, if you are someone that will say for a guy, 12%, for a girl, 22%, you probably should just aim towards getting back towards maintenance and slowly, systematically stepping up your calories from there. And then just tracking and reviewing your progress every single week so you know whether or not you are actually making progress. All right. And finally, the last thing I actually want to talk about, it's not about nutrition, it's not about training, it's actually more so on the mindset side. And this is really important. And the first topic I want to address is self-efficacy. First learned about this in college when I studied as a primary school teacher. And the study was on Bandura, I believe. And self-efficacy basically means your belief in your ability to carry out the task, which is why I always like to ask our clients on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can definitely 100% do those 3 action steps that we left you with? And self-efficacy, if your belief in yourself, that your belief in your ability to get force strength and follow the 3-2-1 method and the 80-20 principle is at a 7 out of 10, or anything less than an 8 out of 10, I would address that and I would say, what needs to happen for you to be an 8, a 9, or even a 10 out of 10 certainty? So if you can say, okay, God, 4 strength, it's just too much for me. Some weeks are more chaotic at work than others. How about 3? Yeah, that sounds much better. You might go from a 7 to a 9. But your belief in your ability to carry out the task is really, really important. So when it comes to setting your non-negotiables, you've got to set them to a point where you're at least 80% certain you can get it done. So if you're 80% certain you can get 4 strength, 10K steps, and that 80-20 principle, absolutely go with that. If you can do more, well, then push the needle that bit more. If you can do less, then scale it back. But do something you know yourself you're confident in. Because if you want to kill your confidence, here's the formula to it. Say you're going to do something and don't do it. That is the best and easiest and fastest way to kill your confidence in yourself, because it means you cannot even trust your own word. So if you want self-efficacy, if you want a belief in yourself, set yourself realistic and also attainable goals. Okay. And that is a good way, just making sure you're confident in your approach. However, confidence, it's not just in the strategy. It's also if you're working with a coach in the coach itself. If a coach tells you that you have to drink orange juice every morning to lose fat, whether there is or is not any scientific research behind that, but you believe that to be true, you will probably still get results from doing that. But on the flip side, if your coach has the best plan there laid out on paper for you, but you don't believe in his or her word, regardless of how good that program is, your results will not be as good. So you need to have belief in yourself and or belief in the people you are listening to and taking advice of. That is really important. Finally, with mindset. And I spoke with this recently on a Instagram post, a Twitter post that I posted on Instagram. It got a lot of reach, and that was self-sabotage. And self-sabotage comes, it's essentially when people think of self-sabotage, think of it's the likes of like binging your face off or throwing in the towel and quitting. But there's a lot of sneaky forms of self-sabotage that you might not be aware of. And for a lot of people, it might be, okay, my current weight is 80. I want to get down to 75. At the moment, I'm comfortable at 80. But 75, that makes me uncomfortable. And often what people do is they will unconsciously self-sabotage their results when they get down to 75 because they don't feel that they're worthy of staying at 75. And what they'll do is they'll let the test success get to them. They're happy at 75, but they'll find a way to get back up to 80 because they just don't feel comfortable at 75. And that is self-sabotaging 101 there. But there's other forms of self-sabotage you mightn't be aware of. This includes talking yourself out of your progress. Someone compliments you, you're looking better, you're looking leaner. God, I see it in your face there. You're obviously doing something. And your first reaction was, maybe I did it wrong. I'm only trying. I'm not really doing a whole lot. Or someone compliments you and your instinct is they're just being nice. I don't think I look that different. Or you're disregarding your own changes. You're looking at your before and afters and you're focusing just solely on your flaws. You're playing down your progress. Okay. You've lost some weight and you're telling yourself, I still have so much more to go though. Or just second guessing yourself. You've lost weight on the scale and, I need to measure myself again. Maybe I did it wrong yesterday. All of this self-doubt, it's you unconsciously self-sabotaging yourself. And the reason you do it is because those thoughts are familiar to your mind. You've been thinking that way for months, for weeks, for months, for even years. And familiarity is safe. It means you're not going to get hurt. So why bother trying to change when you're going to fail and mess up again? That is your thought process. And examples include, this is what someone told me before. I've always been the unfit one in the house. I've never been good at sport. I was always the one that was picked on at school. I was never smart. I never had any confidence in myself. And if you tell yourself that these stories are true, over time, they can just compound and you can just accept them as the norm. And you can accept that as your reality. But if you really want to deal with your self-sabotage, first of all, what I would say is be aware of your triggers. What are some of the things that trigger your self-sabotage? Where are those thoughts coming from? Is it from childhood? Is it from, an unhelpful comment passed down to you by a teacher, by a parent, by a family, by a friend? Once you identify the triggers, this is what I like to do. Give your self-sabotage an alter ego. Mine is called Pascal, okay? I call my self-sabotaging voice Pascal, and I don't like that name, and Pascal sometimes shows up for me too. But once you know your triggers and once you give it your alter ego, rewrite your own story. Are those stories true, or are you just accepting them to be true? Were you really always the unfit one? Have you always lacked confidence in yourself? Question those limiting beliefs, because on the other side of those limiting beliefs is the person you want to become. Don't accept them. If they're not moving you forward, do not accept them. You rewrite your own story. So set realistic goals for yourself. Focus on progress, not perfection. Okay. And just focus. And remember what we said about the start about the habits. Build those good habits. What are your daily non-negotiables? What are your weekly non-negotiables? And keep those promises you build to yourself. And the more those promises you build to yourself, the more your confidence will increase. And your self-sabotaging voice, it will still show up. It's always going to be there in the background. But you can make it minute, you can make it tiny by just setting these small incremental goals and working towards them every single day. That is how you rewrite your own story, and that is how you keep the weight off long term. Not enough talking, not enough discussion is on this, because everyone knows to keep the fat off, to lose fat consistently, you got to eat less and probably exercise a bit more. But how come upwards of 90% of people who lose weight quickly put it back on again? It's because they haven't got the right mindset for a lot of people. And with the right mindset, it's addressing your self-confidence, your self-efficacy, your belief in yourself, and just not self-sabotaging your results. And if you can get that part right, I guarantee you, the calories, the macros, everything else will become much, much easier. So address those self-limiting beliefs you have in yourself and watch your life transform. And I really do mean that, okay? On the other end of that thought is the person that you want to become. All right. And that is it for today. So that is our third part 3 of our 3-part series on losing fat and actually keeping it off long term. So today is a bit heavier on the mindset, on the habit side, and obviously some FAQs there as well. And that is all for this week's episode. So if you did get value from the show, please pay the fee. And the fee is not monetary. You can send me money if you wish, if you got value from it, but the fee is just value exchange. If you feel somebody else could benefit from the show, just share the show. If you did not get value from the show, don't share the show. All right? You do good, I do good. If I don't do good, well, then you don't need to return the favor. But please, that is the only way, if you did get any value at all, this is the only way this podcast will grow. And I'm happy with the growth of it so far. I'm getting more and more people in and listening and helping and transforming more people's lives, which is my ultimate purpose with this. So please share the show. You can share with a family member, you can share with a friend, or even better, my preferred way, if you share it on your IG stories and tag me at Mac Lifestyle Fitness, I will repost it onto my stories. Okay, that is all for this week's episode. Check the show notes. If you would like access to my 7-day fat loss accelerator, I've also got a free Live and Lean recipe cookbook there. So if you want to try out any protein pancakes, what does the 80-20 principle actually look like in practice in a meal? Check that out. And if you want a free 3-day total body training program, I will also post a link in the show notes. That is all for this week's episode 59 of the Lifestyle Lifters Show. Thank you for listening.